Good morning. Right Honorable Speaker, members of the platform, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, some of our UN colleagues, you're most welcome. And to those of you who have traveled from outside Ghana, as we say, Akwaba. I'm very pleased to be here this morning to welcome you to this UNDP IDEA policy dialogue on good governance in Africa. This morning will be the first day of a two-day dialogue aimed at a critical reflection on transformational governance in Africa for sustained peace and development. Over the past decade, since the end of colonialism, it is true that African governance has made some significant progress. There have been notable improvement and economic growth in many countries. Indeed, according to the Mo Ibrahim Index of African Governance, the continent has since 2006 recorded quite some significant improvement in good governance, though, as we agree, much still needs to be done. Overall, 37 countries have made positive gains, while 16 have registered, in terms of the four dimensions of good governance, some progress. And these four dimensions are safety and rule of law, participation and human rights, sustained economic opportunity, and human development. So there is some consensus that 10 of the top-performing countries have made significant progress in this dimension. Out of the 10, however, 3 have seen improvements in all four dimensions of good governance, and these are Rwanda, Namibia, and Senegal. The remaining 7 still requires improvement in at least one of the 4 criteria, but actually, these 10 are really the best performance in the continent. Although the 10 top countries are exhibiting signs of fragility, progress, we must admit, has been made nonetheless. On the political front, many people now live under democracies than in the 70s. The 2016 Mo Ibrahim Index of African Governance showed that 378 million Africans now live in democratic states, relative to 2.5 million in 1970. The African Economic Outlook 2016 noted that in the 1980s, 35 of the 45 states in Africa were undemocratic. But by the 1990s, almost all countries were conducting or at the verge of conducting democratic elections. Elections in Africa has become synonymous with good governance. And I think this is an issue we need to deliberate here as we gather over the next 2 days. Also, this is important because election-related violence seems to be one of the main causes of political instability on the continent. Recent happenings during and after elections in some African countries also sends a warning signal of the transformation of the nature and form of electoral-related violence and the emergence of political vigilantism. I hope we'll have time and we'll devote some time to interrogate this new recent cancer. In terms of economic governance, the continent is making some progress. GDP growth is positive, with GDP per capita of 3%. Poverty has declined from 58% in 1990 to 48.5% in 2010. However, absolute number of the poor is on the increase, and economic governance is increasingly being challenged by global factors. Moreover, institutional governance is also not the best in Africa. Across the continent, we hear reports of corruption, nepotism, favoritism, clientelism, neo-patrimonialism, and you name them, being perpetrated in the midst of weak checks and balances. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, despite these improvements, you would agree with me that the African governance is going through turbulent and trying times making today an opportune moment for us to critically reflect on our system of governance. The Mo Ibrahim report also noted that despite the progress made by the 10 top performers, the overall average score of the continent improved by only 1%, from 49 to 50 over the past decade. Therefore, it is important and critical that we ask ourselves tough questions as we think how governance is conceptualized and practiced across the continent. The current nature of governance in Africa seems not to be serving many ends. States and national governments are failing the people as peace and stability is gradually becoming absent. As we reflect today and tomorrow on how to transform governance for sustainable peace and development on the continent, I hope that by the time we're through with the discussions and debates, that the issues and challenges that confront African governance would be clearer. In addition, I hope that we would have been able to identify the opportunities and practical steps that we need to take to ensure good governance that guarantees peace and political stability, as well as sustained human progress and the rule of law. And finally, above all, and most importantly, we need to figure out a clear and pragmatic governance roadmap and theory of change that will underpin how we approach to transforming governance on the continent. I think we all have significant roles to play. I would just like to end here and to welcome you once more to Ghana. You couldn't have chosen a better country than Ghana that has demonstrated that with good practice of democratic governance, there can be peace, there can be stability, and there can be progress. Thank you.